while we had David Ashford here in the studio, I did promise I'd ask you if you'd talk about what's been going on. And we have to say this is going to be very time sensitive, this interview, because we're recording this on Wednesday. Yesterday, your name came up in the tribunal, the Ranson tribunal. So I'll lay it out. You were accused, basically. I think accused, but you did not do what you were meant to do. You did not give the emails over. You said everything has already gone in. Even your secretary said, I'll go and check. And you said, don't worry, it's all being done. And she does her own search and finds that there's at least 2 emails of questionable that would have been helpful to Dr. Ranson on this. Yes, is that roughly...
Right. Well, let's address that straight on, because it wasn't addressed by the government representative yesterday. So the first dates back to an allegation that I think was made at the February hearing when I gave evidence, that there was an email correspondence where I praised Dr. Ranson, which was a conversation between me and a DHSC worker who had raised concerns about Dr. Ranson transferring to Manx Care. And it was claimed that I didn't disclose that email. After that hearing, I went away and checked, and I did. It was part of my disclosure bundle. So the email praising Dr. Ranson was part of my disclosure and was disclosed at the time.
And I've written me. But you were saying that there's no need for me to put anything in because everything that's gone through Maxon.
There's one very crucial email that is missing from that chain of events, which is the email that followed up from that, where I went to the data protection officer for the department, and I sent another email which actually stated I have gone through and searched all my emails, and I provided a set of emails which Catherine was not copied into, and that was one of them. So actually there's an email chain that is actually missing there.
So you did do your own searches?
So I did do my own
even
searches.
Though we were hearing
I stated that at the tribunal
but they said
when I gave evidence.
Right.
I did do my own searches. Right. I gave an affidavit to that effect to the tribunal, explaining how I undertook that search. So it is not correct to say I didn't do my own searches.
The smoking gun, those 2 words within your
so the first one, which was in relation to my conversation with the DHSC employee, yes, it was in my bundle. Yeah. Where I praised Dr. Ranson.
Claire Barber one?
The Claire Barber one, the answer is no, and the answer to that is because it was no longer on my system. So, as I explained at the original hearing, government IT systems only allow for a certain amount of emails to be kept. So it's 2.2 gig is the maximum capacity of a mailbox. After that, you have to either delete messages or archive them. Now, I tend to archive them, but to put some context on this, the disclosure period in question was 2020 and 2021. In 2020, I received 28,000 emails and I sent 13,000. In 2021, I received 29,000 emails and I sent 15,000. So over that 2-year period, that's 85,000 emails, which is probably more than most people would send and receive in a 10-year period. Now, where possible, I archived emails, and the stuff that was archived was disclosed. But I can't disclose something I physically haven't got.
So how did they get it in the end then?
So I assume one of the members must have still had a copy of it. And so when the data, when Dr. Ranson did a SAR, which would include everyone, that would be where the copy came from. But the copy is not on my system, and I have double-checked that.
It's very convenient, the one email that really was telling. Because
well, actually, that email I don't think was telling.
Were you praising her?
No, that's not the email that was praising her. I did disclose.
Right.
The email that's being discussed with Claire Barber was simply the members clarifying was Dr. Ranson on a fixed-term contract or not.
Claire Barber was saying, is she going? Because we're hearing
these things. Because is that fixed-term contract? Yeah.
But. Why is
so
she going?
It wasn't to do with praising.
Right.
Praising
you hadn't changed because that was another allegation that you changed your stance in that one of the 2 emails missing. You're praising Dr. Ranson, and then otherwise you're agreeing totally with that she's not suitable for the job, right? I mean.
No, I never said that. And in fact, at the tribunal, at the hearing, I stated very clearly that as far as I was concerned, myself and Dr. Ranson had a good working relationship.
But did you deal much with her then? Because it seems, you're always going
towards
through...
the end of my period as DHSC Minister, we had one-to-one meetings.
Yeah.
She had input via different forms. She contacted me over several things. So one of the things that came up at the tribunal was she shared with me the presentation. I've got to be very careful what I say, Paul, because we are still in the middle of a tribunal.
This is not a high court. This is not jury, people.
No,
this is a person who knows what he's doing.
Tribunal.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have done today is I've actually written to the chairman of the tribunal, pointing out the fact that I did disclose as part of my bundle the email that yesterday it was alleged
one
I
of the
didn't.
emails of the two.
And in relation to the other one, I don't have it. So reasonable disclosure, I cannot disclose something that's physically not on my system.
It was very clear, or sorry, it was seemed to be what was said, that you were going with Magson regardless. Whatever, you were just not listening to anybody
Well,
else.
actually, again,
Is that something you
I
want to
dispute
clear
that.
up?
I dispute that, but I, like I say, I've got to be careful what I say while the tribunal is going on.
You have done an affidavit, you've been giving testimony,
Yeah.
and you stand by every word you
I
said?
do. I continue to stand by the affidavit and every single piece of evidence I gave under oath.
So were you surprised when you heard this again? Yeah.
I was very surprised because, as I say, I went back after the hearing in February. I checked whether that email had been disclosed, and it had. It did form part of my submission. And at the time, I went back to the Attorney General's representative and asked for that, the chairman and the members of the panel of the tribunal to be informed of that. So I hope that they were. But I notice it's come up again yesterday.
Do you think it was wise for the government to go to the High Court, for instance? You can talk about that. You give an opinion about that.
I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, I don't have all the information to hand, so there may be something that the Minister for DHSC or it didn't, but maybe they had something I didn't know.
No, they didn't because they lost it.
I'm going to be bluntly honest, Paul. I found it a bit surprising that there was an appeal because I think the disclosure process is important. This disclosure process is going on now because there is allegations that documents were concocted. Now, now my understanding is DHSC disputes that and says that there isn't. That's my understanding.
Well, this metadata business,
the metadata
which
business,
is going off to a...
But what I would say is it is important from my point of view that process continues, because if it turns out people have concocted evidence, as you said before about the tribunal and not being a court of law and all that, the tribunal effectively is a court of law under the Tribunals Act.
They've got the powers.
And actually, if it turns out that someone has somewhere concocted evidence, that's a very serious thing.
What do you think to Magson then now? Because she can't come back to the Isle of Man because she's likely to be... exactly that. Court of law could be waiting for her because there's potential that things were done not correctly, and I'm being
like
careful
I say,
myself.
I'm not going to talk
but
about
potential. You really followed that lady.
But one of the... No.
Didn't you? I mean, you really did listen to every word she said.
No, Paul, we can have a longer conversation about that. Okay. As I say, once everything's concluded, I'm still going to, I said I'd do this interview and I've focused on the bits that are mine.
I'm really trying.
I'm not going to... I know, and that's your job, is to try and push me on this, but I'm not going to be tempted into talking about the wider picture because I don't want to say anything that may... You
accept, anyway, that the tribunal went in her favour, therefore you accept
definitely.
So she was treated appallingly badly?
Well, again, I'll do that. I'll comment on that in the longer form interview once the tribunal was concluded. I've received very clear advice in relation to sub judice and what can and can't be said, but I will do a longer form interview with you once that's concluded. Most happy.
And I know you will. Just to finish this off with, I mean, this is not making the Isle of Man look good, is it? Let's face it. I mean, this is just appalling the way it's playing out, especially to the medical professionals who we want to live here and do things here, and yet it's tainted by this. Clearly, I think we're okay because she has won her case, so we can be talking about the ramifications to the wider public of that ruling.
Well, one of the things I would say, and it's something I've said for a long time, and I warned of this when I was Minister for the Department, and in fact, I appointed a member of the department as a member for culture to actually try and drive some cultural change, because one of my concerns was always across not just DHSC but across government, there was a certain culture that was underlying.
A culture.
And I think that, and it needs to fundamentally change.
You accept corruption?
Well, I'm not saying anything while the tribunal's ongoing. But what I would say is the culture across government needs to radically change.
Right.
Absolutely radically change. And the Chief Minister's
committed to that. When you were in there, you didn't see any of this? Culture.
Well, no, there were certain things that I raised concerns about, but again, I'm not going to go into this while the tribunal's ongoing. So I raised at a senior management level with the way certain individuals were treated, that I had concerns with, and that was raised at a senior level within government, and also I raised even when I was a backbencher before I was a minister with certain pieces. So this is something the Chief Minister quite rightly has committed government to. It was one of the reasons I resigned as Treasury Minister, because I did not want to become a distraction
You had to go,
to government.
I mean, if you didn't go, you're being pushed, right? I mean,
well, I don't think there was no indication I was going to be pushed. There was no conversations in that regard. And as I say, when I came to the Chief Minister, he asked me to reflect on it before making a decision. But it was purely my decision to go, and I thought it was the honourable thing to do. Because I didn't, as we said at the very start when we did our Year 1 interview just a few moments ago, when a politician becomes the news story, that's not right.
Are you whiter than white on this whole thing?
Well, again, we'll do a longer form interview afterwards, but I stand by the fact I was not involved in any employment decisions around Dr. Ranson, because it would be fundamentally improper for a minister to be involved in employment decisions. The government code is very, very clear that in terms of employment matters, it's actually the CEO of the department that deals with those. If anyone has a whistleblowing issue, there is very clear processes as to how that's dealt with, particularly if it's a whistleblowing issue against the CEO. There's very clear processes that both sides have to follow.